Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and hello to all my returning subscribers. Thank you for checking out this video and hello to any new viewers who's looking at this. Hope you guys decide to stay, like this video, and of course subscribe. I'm here with my friend Brian. Today we're actually going to do one video that's a lot in demand. We just actually graduated, yay, from Central Washington University, and one of the last classes you have to take when you're at Central is called Marketing 489, right?
It's
not marketing. Management 489. I forgot the name of it. It's like
strategic management.
Yep. I think a lot of schools, it's not going to be called the same, but a lot of big universities have the same kind of class. It's a real big capstone. It pretty much is taking all you learn from all your business courses and putting in one big class. So this class that me and him took and like another same class that another professor taught, what they make you do is called a simulation. It's called the business strategy game. And that is pretty much where you just take everything you learn, you run your own company. Just give you guys a quick background, and Brian can just add anything, but it's pretty much you're owning like a shoe company. Other simulations is a different one, but it's pretty much you're making all the decisions of like how many shoes you want to sell, how much you want to spend on marketing, your logistic portion for supply chain, your accounting, reading financial statements. It's taking everything you learn in the basics of business and applying it into that simulation.
I think cost accounting comes in handy a lot, and just having a good understanding of just supply chain actually helps a lot with this one.
The best people who do in the game I've heard is supply chain and accounting. If you definitely make because you do these simulations in teams usually, or you can do it alone, I would definitely find those kind of people in your group to make a group, and that would be one of the biggest. Before we dive into that, like any simple tips, like maybe forming your group, like how you decide on that.
Forming the group is kind of funny. It's mostly just find people that you get along with and know are going to be responsible.
Absolutely, and then maybe scheduling matching up. I think would be an important one too.
Very much. I don't know if everybody, because I mean, for us we had to do it in groups, but you could also do it alone. So if you have the chance to do it alone, you can always do that. It's a little overwhelming at first.
Yep, true.
But once you get the gist of it, it's actually pretty simple. At least I had a lot of fun with it.
I think like we talked about it a little bit, like when you start getting into, I wouldn't say routine, like maybe a routine, a lot of the same decisions like you already applied, you're going to make small changes pretty much. You're not going to overhaul your strategy each time. Maybe toward like the middle when you see your numbers like halfway, because it's a 10-round game, so about 10 years, maybe halfway through you're going to change around and see what to do. So guys, we'll get into it and then we'll give an overall toward the end. Again, this is only from one of the professors. I don't want to really name them, but if you do have this professor at Central Washington University, they do it differently compared to the other one. But this strategy and like the overall explanation can be applied to both classes, because BSG runs kind of similar to any of the classes you're going to. We're not really going to give you guys our main, like what we did number-wise, but we will give you strategies and tips that we did that's very helpful, and we think you could win, like do good. I wouldn't say you're going to maybe win, but I think you can at least finish in the top 3 at least.
Yeah, at least. I mean, it depends on how your class is graded. If your class is graded entirely in position, then I think we'll get you by.
Yep.
And if it's entirely based on your actual score, then we'll definitely get you passing.
And I think that's another thing is, I think the goal, what we can do is at least help you score over 100. Well, our professor really told us that she was very surprised when people scored over 100, especially the amount of people, because I guess it is difficult. And going through the simulation, you have to understand, guys, that it's not only decisions you make, but like what the rest of the teams are doing in your simulation with you, because that's how the market's reacting. It's not only on your decisions, but what everyone else is doing, like stuff with tariffs and like trade and everything was another one.
I mean, it really depends on like kind of how the market is doing and how I feel like every time that you play this game is going to be different.
Exactly.
A little bit. Because it really depends on your competition and the amount of competitors that you have, how the market's going to react to different things, and what other strategies people are using.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. So I'm going to do the split screen on this to show you like the actual screen of the BSG. I got rid of most of my numbers, but even if you see my numbers, you guys don't really know what I did. But I'm going to start that right now. So here we go. Hold on. Alright guys, so we're about to start and we're just going to show you the screen. So in 3, 2, 1, and then it's about to record. There we go. So opening the screen right now, I already logged in, so it saves us time. But pretty much, here's this first, you're gonna log in, your professor's gonna provide you all this information, and this is gonna be where the starting point is. So there's, as you can see, there's decisions, reports, and then decision entries. We did it up from round 10 to
Year 1 through 10.
year 1 through 10. And so pretty much the first tab, as you can see, is corporate citizenships. So Brian, you can choose where I jump in or anytime.
Yeah.
This one I did not spend that much time in the first couple years. This really helps what's called your image rating, which indicate to what's it called? It'll help you in sales later on. Let's, for example, you guys are near the same prices and everything. The tipping point could be your image rating of why people would buy your product and everything. Anything?
I mean, this helps a little bit. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time on it. I would definitely spend a little bit of time on it, but not a whole ton of it. And always be watchful of your annual operating cost per pair sold. So kind of choose one of the options that is most cost effective. That's what I would recommend.
So for like green foot materials, I think I didn't do anything there. Really tried saving up money in my first couple rounds. I didn't utilize this until toward, I think, round 6 or 7 when I had to bump my image rating up because it was so low. It was like in the 50s. And that really applied to my, what's it called, 3-year plan. The 3-year plan is where you predict the next 3 rounds, and the closer you are to your numbers, or where you overperform, what's called, where you go above, that helps. So that's why I applied this toward the later rounds. So like Brian said, I wouldn't spend too much time, but it will factor
Definitely
in.
help.
Yeah. So that's corporate citizenship. Like you said, like there you can do charitable contributions, energy efficient, ethnic ones. Go ahead.
I think the ethics, training and enforcement, and the workforce diversity program are going to be probably the most helpful ones to your cause.
That's what my professor told me to,
yeah.
like to utilize that. And what you have to understand, one round will not affect you that much. So you have to let this run a couple rounds, because then that will start affecting your image rating. But if you're thinking a quick fix, I would say maybe charitable contributions or
Charitable contributions.
the more you
Yeah.
apply, the cheaper it'll be and
But
everything.
ultimately, there's other things that also play into your image rating.
Copy
So
that.
we'll kind of go down over that a little bit later.
Okay, so that was corporate citizenship. You're gonna go through this. Like I said, like if you apply this and you want to stick with it, you don't have to keep doing this. Like you can leave it and go, okay, maybe I'm not gonna change that round. It saves time. Maybe your first couple rounds, you might spend a lot of time. I think the first time you guys did it, you spent like at least 2 hours or something.
2-3 hours on it. But by the time that we were, by like round 6 or 7, we were spending maybe half an hour on the decisions.
Exactly. So the next one is sales forecast. I didn't really touch this until I only did retail price. So retail price is the one that you sell to retailers of how much you're gonna apply. I put mine under market one because my idea when I first started my strategy was to do a Walmart style, where you try to do the cheapest prices possible, and then you're gonna resell at a cheap price. It worked for me for a couple rounds until like about 6 or 7, until another company did the same strategy and it became very cutthroat. So pretty much it was like going, who can go the cheapest? But then you have to indicate the profit margins, because I started putting more money into my shoes, like the quality of the product, materials, and it really cut into my cost. So I had to change strategy. But that strategy does work. Brian's group, he worked more on this. I didn't really touch on this.
So there's some things that you can't control really in this. The industry averages is really what you can't really control. But a lot of the information on these 2 columns that you have, the one on the left, you kind of have control over that information, and you already know, because you already know what you're going to be setting your prices at, how many models you're going to be doing, all that stuff. So just go ahead and manipulate that data. This is a pretty good way to get some extra points.
I think also a lot of companies that perform well did free shipping.
We did free shipping. We didn't do free shipping at first, and then we did free shipping later.
Yep, that's what I learned did. Like that's why I noticed because you can see the results of other companies after each round, and it shows like what decisions they made, and you can base like re-strategize by that. But that's one thing we noticed, like with the free shipping, all the big companies who are winning did that. Do you want to explain this one area too?
That's the same thing as it's the same sort of thing where the column on the left you kind of have control over a little bit. It's kind of given for the next year, so you can kind of manipulate that information, and if it's close enough within a certain margin, I'm not entirely sure what that margin is, but if your performance is fairly close to that number, you'll actually get some extra points, which are nice. We actually got beat by entirely almost by extra points.
Oh yes, I know what Brian's talking about. You get a small extra point bump, and that factors into your overall score.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that. That comes in a mixture. Also, I think if you win like social responsibility award, you get extra point.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's not the only thing. There's extra ways to get points.
And then also down below we have inventory clearance. I never had to use that.
Me
We did.
neither.
Yeah, we had some built inventory, but we were able to sell that off. This is just essentially you can sell if you have a lot of overstock. You can basically put it on clearance and sell it, get rid of it that way. So if you start accumulating a lot of inventory, that's a good exit. But all things like in a good scenario, you don't really want to be building inventory.
So keep that in mind. I don't know what you guys. We'll talk about maybe more later, but about safety stock and stuff. I always made sure there's a little more safety stock, and I think that
It was automatic.
oh, it was automatic.
It's automatic.
Okay. But my thing is, I built that, and the mindset is like you wanted. We'll show you. And it's one of the screens you want. I think you should always put in the positive. You should never have a shortage. That's one thing my professor told me when I asked to go through it once, and
Okay.
she indicated that there was always. It seemed like I had a shortage in the beginning of the rounds, so she indicated I maybe should build a surplus. So that was sales and forecast. Were you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
so,
And then the next was plant capacity and upgrades. I did a lot on this. Did your group do anything?
Yeah,
here?
we did a whole
You go
bunch of
first.
stuff. So purchasing capacity, you have two options. We have one option to purchase capacity. Some people will sell. Some other teams will sell their capacity, so you can actually purchase it on that. But it's open only when other people decide to sell it. That's we found out the hard way because we're
Oh.
like, oh, is there no capacity to be bought? It's like, oh, it's because other people have to put it up for sale, and then you can buy it off of them. But other people can buy it too, so be conscious of that. So some other people might beat you to it.
Copy.
That's for that screen. In equally, you can also sell your own capacity if you're made too much, but usually you will. In all likelihood, is that you will actually use all your capacity at some point on the game or another. So it's an easy way to raise capital, but
And do you have anything else you're going to talk about here?
plant and upgrade options is another one that our team did.
Yep. Same.
Find the most cost-effective one that's actually going to bring you the bigger benefit.
And as you can see, guys, is applying. You only can do 2 upgrades per plant.
That's another thing. You can
Yeah.
only so make sure that it actually counts.
Mhm.
But normally, I would go for the most cost-effective ones that make the biggest impact.
What do you guys choose?
In all honesty, what I did was I would divide the rate of, like for instance, for option A,
Yep.
I would divide the number on the bottom by the number on the top
Mhm.
and see which out of all those choices,
Mhm.
which one had the highest basically percentage.
Copy that.
So that's one way how I figured out, hey, which one's actually going to give us the better, the most benefit essentially.
So I pretty much did the same one. The reason why I did, I think, when we start the simulation, that there is the plants that you only have are Asia and North America, correct?
Yeah.
And it's your choice. So Asia right now would take care of like the Europe market, and North America would take care of the North and South American. What I wanted to do, I know this might sound like kind of petty and like kind of people will go, wow, that's very immoral. I went for cheaper labor, and Latin America had the cheaper labor. So what I did is I took in the first round. I'll show you guys. I took a loan to build one. So we'll go into that screen. But like I did, for example, I chose the ones that I utilized most, which was reduced rejection rate. That indicates that you will have less chance of getting bad shoots at your after production. And then facilities are great, work productivity. There's more shoes can be produced. That's why I chose these 2. My end goal was to get rid of North American plant because that had the highest labor. That was my choice. Because also with Latin America, there was no tariffs going from Latin America to North America.
Yeah, there's no import. There's no import. There's no trade. Basically, there's no. It takes into consideration NAFTA, I guess, if you will. So where like the American continent can just trade across just fine. So North America, you don't have to pay taxes to import or export stuff from Latin America.
Exactly.
Whereas we actually built a giant hub out of Asia Pacific.
Nice.
That's how we fed everything else. But we also ended up doing a Latin American plant that had a lot of capacity.
This is one of my strategies that my other friend, he took another professor, but same simulations. They opened a plant in each one, even in
Yeah.
Europe. But the reason is their demand was so high. So if your demand's not matching, if the plants that you have, I would, in my opinion, choose the lowest, cheapest one, because that would allow a bigger profit margin. But if you have that kind of demand, you should take care of there, and that's what they did. They just had such a big demand for these items that they had the they needed plant capacity to do that as well. So we're gonna go into that actually. So for example, you want to build capacity, but at the same time, like your Latin America plant isn't built, so that's why you build capacity. And this is the screen that it will show. These ones are just estimates. It's just really, and then if you go here, portion of the total confident cost to be financed with debt. I did 100% when I created my Latin American one because I didn't have that kind of funds yet.
Yep.
What happens with that when you ask for a loan? It does hit your credit rating. I think I was at A plus. It dropped me down to a B plus or B. So keep that in mind. But that's only one round. When you start paying back, your credit rating is going to go up.
Another thing to keep in mind, because we tried to do this thing where we took out a big old loan towards the end of the simulation.
Oh, okay.
Because we were like, oh, we're not gonna have to pay this back because of the simulations.
I think a lot of people were thinking that too.
And unfortunately, that does actually hit your credit rating really badly.
Yeah.
If you don't pay back your loan.
Exactly.
Essentially, I think you actually take a demerit of some sort. So that actually did affect us. So don't do what we did. Pay off your loan before the simulation. The last round ends, and then actually all those assumptions you can the first
Capacity.
expected case you actually know it, right? Because you're
Yep.
actually going to be using it.
Yep.
And then your selling price, internet wholesale, all that stuff is in one of the reports.
Yep.
And do you remember which report that was? I think it's on your.
I think down here.
It's in one of your footwear industry reports.
Yep.
So you can find all that information there. I don't remember specifically which one.
Well, you guys also, like, I don't know if it was for you, but when you actually propose this, it tells you, like, what kind of rating you'll get.
Yeah.
If it'll be good or bad, or, like, you're going to be in trouble.
It tells you if it's, like, what your prospects for profitability will be. So
mine was severe. Like, it says, don't make this. I still made it, and it worked out well. So take it with a grain of salt, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, if it doesn't give you a signal, good. If it gives you a signal,
just be wary.
And use your best judgment.
And also up here, I'm out of new capacity, so you're starting with 0. I think for my first one, I started 100, but over years, I had to build capacity, so it's really up to you. I would, if you're really going to use, like for me, like Latin America as being one of my main hubs for South America and North America, I would just maybe build straight out there, and then just pay your thing.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. Don't be afraid to use your credit.
Yep, you can build it up over it later in the years.
You can always end up paying your loans later on,
and that helps your credit.
Yeah.
You were good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. And then, like I said, that one, so you'll build capacity, you'll take your loan. We'll show you that toward the end, but that's pretty much what I did for this portion. And then the next one we're going to go to is branded production. So this one for me is, I touched on barely. It's so like for here, percentage superior materials. So there's two common ones. There's like a standard material and the superior. If you utilize more superior, it's going to be better. So that's up to you if you want to do it. It will cost you more money on your items. And number of models, you can bump this up. These all help you toward your SQ rating. SQ rating, I think Brian would be better at explaining that than me, but this all factors into there. But the more models you do, you have to understand it's going to cost you more money too.
And you're going to have more reject pairs, so that's going to affect your capacity, because then you're basically going to be throwing capacity at something that is basically failing, right?
Yep.
So the more pairs you have, the more setup time you're going to have, the more cost you're going to have, and the more reject rates you're going to have, the higher of a higher reject rate you will have. So SQ rating is basically the quality of your shoes. This was actually plays into another factor that plays into your company image.
Yep.
So essentially, to raise your company image through your SQ rating is essentially have good shoes at a reasonable price.
Yep.
That's essentially it. I think we ended up with like maxing it out towards the end of the game.
SQ rating also gets helped by celebrities, correct?
No.
Or was that image only?
No, that's your celebrities only affect your sales.
Copy that.
So it's another way to basically use advertisement.
So SQ rating also factors into how well you perform in the rounds. So keep that in mind. Like you may sell the most, but if your SQ rating is not that well, it's going to affect you in the end results. I didn't touch on the compensation as much as well. I don't know if you
the
guys.
compensation we just left it as is. In all honesty,
Mhm.
we just left it the way that the simulation
Same.
is. Just stop.
The same.
And then just one last thing on the SQ rating. Just be mindful of what other companies are doing.
Yep.
You can find that on
the report. I think it's the first one, scorecard, or
no, it's gonna be on the if you go down.
It's gonna be in one of the reports, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be the competitive intelligence reports. It's gonna be under market snapshot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking
where
about
you can
now.
see where everybody else.
We can go in there quick, but this pretty much shows you what the
Yeah.
rest of the company's doing. So
And
it's
then-
like,
yeah, so just go ahead through North America.
yeah,
also
and it
let
shows
them-
you.
Yeah, figure it out from there. So just be conscious of what other people are doing.
We did. I use this a lot too, especially with price. Price was one of the big factors, and then on advertising and models and stuff. I don't know about other teams, but like you can see, like what Brian's talking about, the SQ rating is 6.4, 8.
Yeah.
This one's like this is the team that beat me for me.
Yeah.
And you can see why.
Yeah,
Suppose that.
that's who beat us too. Actually,
Same
company
letter.
did. Yeah.
You got yep. Were we under?
They were like on like the top 50 in the world actually for the month for the end of the month.
Wow.
Because they do like there's actually like
annual ranking,
Yeah.
not annual but worldwide, nationwide.
yeah. So
I was never in there, but yeah.
I think we were there for something. And that's it.
Hey,
So yeah, I guess. But other than that,
were you done with this one?
yeah, well, no.
Okay.
So actually, if we go down through this, is if you want to go into private label. So this is essentially how many of your pairs do you want to be allocated to branded production, and how many of those pairs do you want to be allocated towards
Yep.
Private label. Private label is cool, but it can be tricky, and it got really competitive for our simulation.
Or some branded. You're talking about private, which is
No, I mean it's still like if you
same layout.
Yeah, because
Okay.
you have to actually use this. For instance, like if you look over regular and overtime.
Yep.
So, for instance, if we were to do only 4,100 for the Asia Pacific plant,
Yep.
you would have 120 pairs available.
Mm-hmm.
So your overtime to go into private label.
Yep.
So you would be able to produce 120 pairs to dedicate to private label sales,
Gotcha.
and only 4,100 for your branded production. So that's one way to split your capacity for different sectors, different.
For me, I just maximized for the regular and overtime. Same for all my plans, even when I had North America.
Yeah.
But when my South American, Latin American branch started being able to cover both Latin America and North America, I stopped using this one and just focused here. But when you do that, you are, what is it called? You are not forced, but you are required by this. When you increase your capacity, these hours go up as well. You were done or good?
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, for me.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's up to you of how much if you want to pay overtime and stuff. But yeah. So branded distribution, I'll just touch on this quick, and then Brian can go.
yeah.
So pretty much is you have to distribute it. So it's gonna tell you sometimes here you have 5 more that need to set. So if it's in the red, you have to increase it. It matches of how many hours you have. For example, I'm gonna say 623 because it had set 5. That's how much it is here. And then same here, it says I have to ship 4 more. So I put 1145 and it's good to ship. Again, like if Latin America wasn't here, I would have been utilizing North America. Sometimes the satisfaction, but as you can see, I did North America, Latin America, and I didn't have enough capacity, so I had to still use some of my Asian plant. And as you can see, I had the Asian plant take care of Asia and Europe and Africa. And this one is pretty much telling you how much you'll have more in warehouse. I always put surplus, at least 50 to 100. That's up to you. But with these negative numbers showing right now, it would indicate I have a shortage. I'll have a shortfall when I sell. And then when you go into here, it tells us the cost of per available for each shoe of how much it's going to cost. As you can see, this is the reason why I opened my Latin American. It's just the cheapest out of all of the other plans.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just be really cautious of which pairs you're using to fit into which markets. I would recommend using the North American plant to basically just fit into the North American plant, and that's it.
Oh, like domestic, right?
Just have domestic production go to the domestic market, because otherwise it's going to cost you an arm and a leg in shipping rates and just trade rates.
Yep.
So Asia Pacific plant, it's probably going to be your cheapest. Same thing with your Latin America plant.
Yep.
So use those wisely.
Do you open a Latin American plant?
Yeah,
Okay.
we used an Asia Pacific plant and a Latin American plant. We avoided using a Europe Africa one,
Yep.
even though it was our biggest market.
Oh, okay.
We were just able to feed Asia Pacific into Europe Africa
Yep.
successfully. But be conscious of where you're sending your which plants you're using to feed which market, because it will affect your profitability.
Yep.
And it will
Because
affect
there's
your
also
margins.
exchange rates too that you have to factor in. That game that does play into it.
Mhm.
And your professor can change the simulation, so your tariffs could go up 1 year or go down. There might be no tariffs for that year, and then there's also the exchange rates can go up or down. So keep that in mind to see how the market's doing. So that's brand and distribution, guys. So now we're gonna go internet marketing. So internet marketing, I think the only thing I did for my one was I looked at the online pricing. I took a different approach. I put mine real low in like the first 4 or 5 rounds. The reason being is this would attract more retailers. Because when you decide not to go into the online market, you're not competing with your retailers. So there's a higher chance they'll take more of your product and sell in their stores. But again, like later in the rounds when my items weren't selling, I had to utilize this a little more. I don't know what you guys did.
What we did is essentially we just set a good competitive price, and we offer free shipping, and
Same.
that's pretty much all that we did. We never really moved it. I think we just kept going. We had pretty healthy margins on that, in all honesty. The only thing that I would point out is models offered. You can only offer as many models as you offer to your retailers. So you can't offer your retailers like 100 pairs or 200 pairs, and offer, let's say, like 250 pairs to your online market. Like you can only do as much or less
Okay.
than your branded production.
Copy that. All right. So that was this
And
one.
you can also block all internet orders per market. Yeah.
Your retailers would be happy, but I don't know how
Yeah.
happy your customers would be.
Yeah, essentially, it's just like if you're not doing too well in one market and you kind of just don't want to bother with it.
Yeah.
That's one way, but I'd recommend against it if possible.
Okay. So that was internet marketing. You agreed on that one?
Yeah.
So wholesale. This is where I spent a lot of time because that was where I focused. Like I said, I treated this like almost a Walmart one, and like this one, I really just focused wholesale. I went with the lower, cheaper price. And again, like you can see the sales forecast, like the pricing report of what your compares it. I always went low of what was called the industry average, and just went lower. And I changed that strategy later to or because I started losing money because other people were doing that. So I had to like bump my sales up. But as you can see, wholesale and then advertising, I sometimes in the later rounds went above my advertising to make it, and then mail and rebate. And I think with delivery to retailers, I cut it down once in like 2 rounds to 2. That takes some money, I think, toward like your end cash or something. I can't remember, but that's what I did with that one.
Yeah. That's another thing. Essentially, we just played with these numbers to make sure that we were meeting demand, that our wholesale market share was growing, or at least staying about the same.
Copy that.
And always making sure that you had nice profitable margins.
Okay.
But I think for our company, it was like anywhere between 15% and above worth of the margin. It got pretty competitive.
Yeah. I think when like people start looking at each other's strategies and like start doing this, and then now you have to be flexible and react to those ones. Yeah. So that was wholesale marketing. We're gonna go celebrity endorsements. I didn't do this until like later in the rounds, and I decided to choose people for the Latin America area. But you have these celebrities, which is kind of weird because they're based on real people, but they just change their name.
They have like the best names ever.
Yeah, so it's pretty much becomes a bidding. Like you put a bid and see how much. I went after athletes that I knew people wouldn't go after. But you can also see like their celebrity appeal like for North American stuff. So like I focused on Latin America and Asia because that's where I wanted my sales to be. But as you can see, so you'll put a bid in, and it's just a starting point, and you'll bid there, or you can go higher, and it tells how long the contract is. I don't know what else you guys did.
I mean, that's a pretty good way to explain it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. The one thing that I would add to that is just that this is another way to cut back on your advertisements costs. Yep. because basically these having this celebrity endorsements will help your sales anyway.
Yep.
So depending on which market you want to target, you can bid on the celebrities.
Yep.
And then depending on how much you bid, then you can actually then budget your advertisement costs. So just kind of mix and match and see what works out best to create more sales.
What my professor said also is it's up to you. She's seen people go outrageous with these contract bids and it gets higher. Maybe if you're really not like, you're going with a low strategy, maybe just don't do celebrity bills and just bump up your advertising expense a little bit. It will save you money.
Yeah.
Because she says sometimes people do get wild with the bidding.
One of the biggest competitor, I think, had control over like 8 or 9 celebrities at some point.
Oh, wow.
And and they were bidding fairly high, but again, that was very late in the game.
Copy. All right, next one is private label. I'm not even going to talk about it, so Brian knows more about it. I didn't touch into it.
Yeah, this was fun. So this can be a dodgy area. The thing that you have to be really careful with this, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
You have to be really careful with this bid price. So your bid price is going to be based entirely off of the going rate of the market. So if we go over to market snapshot.
Click one more time.
Click one more time.
On the left, yeah, on the left side, there you go.
There we go. Got it. So we're going to have to go to, it should be right here, private label segment. So you basically look at what the average is for this line and do about $5 less than that. So that's required by it's by the private label. So if let's say that everybody bid, let's say $30, then you would have the average from the previous year from the starting year was $30. You would have to do 25, but then you wouldn't have to do 20 or 15 like the years after that. You would only have to do like stay competitive after that.
Copy that.
That's about it. And then the SQ rating is really mandated by the market. So that will be displayed over here. Private label. So here's going to be your year 21, what's required by the market. So for us, it was like, I think it was capped at 7.
Okay.
By the end of it, so it continues to increase as the years go by.
Copy that.
Here's where this comes in handy. So wherever you have production available, capacity available to dedicate to private label, this is where you will be able to use it.
Okay.
And then
that's why because North American plant was the only one that wasn't used, so that's where the capacity went.
Yeah. And this is where your price comes in handy from previous years and the average and all that stuff. And here is going to be your margin over direct costs. Always be watchful of that, especially when you're shipping private label to different places, because sometimes your margins are going to be really, really, really low, and you might actually lose money. So even though everything up here might make sense and be accurate, you might just simply be shipping it to the wrong place, or not necessarily the wrong place, but rather a very unprofitable place. Like if you're shipping shoes from North America to Asia Pacific on private label, chances are you're probably losing money on that. So always be careful of your margin over direct costs.
I didn't utilize it a lot, but I know a lot of the top companies who did perform well, they utilize this. So don't take it as just forget about it.
Yeah.
Use it to your advantage later on, especially when you're branded. When it gets real competitive, this might be the tipping point.
Yeah, and you can use it by market. So if somebody gets really competitive in one market, you can always opt out of it and focus on one. And lastly, it will help your company image rating a lot too.
Good to know. Yeah. Good to know. So that was private label operations, and now we're going to go finance and cash flow. So this one is where you took the loan. As you can see, there's 1 year bank loan, 5 year, 10 year. For my first one, when I built my plant, I utilized a 10 year bank loan with the lowest interest. The highest interest one. But later on, after I paid off that one, the next year I took another loan to pay my old loan. That helped out. I don't know other people, but that was a good strategy for me, and that helped out. Stock issues help with your ROE, believe. correct? Retained.
No, it's just another way to raise capital.
Raise capital,
to
okay.
funding. So essentially, if you want to pay for your
Stock repurchase was the
yeah.
one. So I did that toward later to
Yeah.
bump up my ROE, because that's part of the 3-year plan later on that factors in. So that's what I did. If I had to give some, like, one of big advice is I would do this earlier.
Yeah.
And maybe stock issue. I didn't
Yeah.
do it enough, in my opinion, to have an impact. It only happened toward later, so it did have an impact, but only a short time.
We did stock repurchase. We actually maxed out from like the beginning,
Copy.
and we progressively had to kind of cut back
Oh.
because we simply had
Stock repurchase also bumps up your stock price, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another
earnings
thing.
per share. It raises your earnings per share, your return on equity, and it just makes and also it just makes you look better
Yeah.
overall. It helps you out a lot.
Very true.
So that's something that I would look into like right off the get go.
Mhm.
And as far as like paying out dividends, I think we only paid dividends like twice towards the end of the game, and it was very minimal.
Okay, I didn't ever do that.
I mean, as long as your company is doing well,
Yeah.
and you continue to repurchase your stock and your earnings per share continue to go up, essentially you don't really need to pay out a dividend. It won't really affect. At least it didn't affect us.
Just also, guys, give you a perspective. My stock repurchase finished around. My stock price finished around 273. The top company in my group who did it, who I compete against, theirs finished in like 500 per share. So that's just something they must have done this a lot, stock repurchase, and I didn't. And something with one of my other friends, they performed well. They were actually ranked nationally, like overall, like number 6 in the top 16 or something. I could be wrong, but what they told me is they never kept a lot of end cash, and I was on the wrong mind that to keep a lot. They said they only kept maybe up to 40,000 to $1 million end cash. The rest they spent on other stuff. I don't know how you guys did it.
Like retained earnings?
No,
like
end cash. How much money you had in each quarter after each round.
I think that's one of the reasons why we were kind of stingy with that, actually.
Yep. And he said they never did that. And they,
so don't be stingy.
Yeah, that's
pay
what
off your loans, either find other ways to spend your cash.
Exactly.
Make sure that your profitability is kind of continuing ongoing, but like use your money.
Yeah, pretty much and I think this is where they spent most of their money after they did capacity. They were buying stock purchases or issuing them out, and then they were buying celebrity appeals and stuff. So that's just one. That's another one. So that pretty much is when you guys go through decisions. You'll do that each round. Like I said, you don't have to keep doing it. It gets easier because you go, maybe I'm not going to change this one. Now we're just going to go. The video is going kind of long. We'll just try to go through these quicker.
Yeah.
But like with scorecard.
Yeah, it's just.
Want to explain that one?
Yeah, it's essentially how you're doing and how everybody else is doing and who got bonus points within it.
This is what he's talking about, the bonus points, like +1. No, where's the bonus points?
Yeah, that's
right here.
Yeah, right there.
So there's one for a year score, like each round, and then there's
to date.
To date.
So even if you did kind of poorly on one year, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing poorly overall.
Oh, so you can't touch this at the best. My bad.
So game to date scoreboard, that's essentially your overall score, and that's where your at least what our grade in the class meant.
So what should go ahead?
So if you got over, for instance, Company C ended up at the top of the game in this case, 117 points. They probably got 117%.
Yep. So you get the extra if you scored, and that's what she said. She was surprised that so many people scored over 100. So guys, this is what we're trying to tell them. The goal is to score over 100. That would be the best. So for example, she bases it out 100. If you get over, it's extra credit, and that really helps.
So hopefully your class is structured the same way.
Yep.
So that way you don't have to worry so much about competition rather than just kind of getting by.
Exactly. So that's the scorecard, and then the EPS, REO, stock price. Go ahead.
We never really use this too much. I mean, it's a good reference, but it's a good way to pat yourself in the back.
Yeah.
If you're doing well.
And the next one is the credit rating and all that. Same. I pay attention a little with the credit rating, but after I really paid my loan, it wasn't that hard to maintain an A+ in my opinion.
And I mean, your image rating and credit rating, it kind of, you get as you're making decisions and you save them, you actually get a projection.
Yep.
On the side, so that kind of summarizes.
It's like in the bottom
report.
here, but my thing is it's not showing because I haven't made any decisions yet. Yeah.
But yeah, you do get like a little quick access menu that shows this, and that kind of pretty much summarizes what you need to know about this report. But if you want to look at all the companies,
yep, it pretty much shows you again. And then bonus points right here. Again, there's different factors. Brian mentioned one. I believe I mentioned about the social responsibility.
Yeah.
I didn't really go into it, but it does help. I think I got 3 extra bonus
Yeah.
points.
Sales forecast, that's sales forecast, and then your 3-year plan, how accurate it is to it, actually does give you some extra points. And actually your score on those assignments will be based off on how accurately you were able to predict your performance.
And then the next one is overview plan one. And capacity, again, I didn't really touch the reports. I don't know if you guys' groups.
We did, and
Yeah.
reason being is because it helps with your decision making in terms of capacity building,
Copy.
building capacity. But other than that, not too much.
Then there's the financial summary. Like I said, you're taking everything you learned in all business classes.
Yeah.
It's here, financial ones, cash on hand, stuff like that cost. Then performance benchmarks.
This one, I think this is actually where you. I can't remember where it is because it's been a few weeks since we.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
We dumped this all when we graduate.
Yeah, I dumped this off like the second we were done with it. It's like, well, see ya. Was fun. And I think this is where you're.
Oh, guys, while he's trying to figure it out, I would also really pay attention how the BSG works. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, here we go. Sorry. So this is where you would kind of figure your some of the estimates.
Oh, okay.
For
the
the capacity.
Gotcha.
This is the low, the average, and the high for.
So when you build your capacity, this is what he's talking about when you have
Yeah.
to make the estimates.
Yeah, when you have to make the estimates. This, I think, this is the report where you get it. You have your marketing expenses,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you have over something over there that you can do that.
So guys, when you're going through the BSG, because our teacher, our final exam, like we had a comprehensive on the BSG. So it wasn't based on the book or anything. A lot of it was really based on, did you understand how this BSG worked? So keep that in mind when you're doing this. I wouldn't just say, even if you have a really good group member, I would try and understand the aspects of this. The last one's celebrity endorsements and stuff.
Yeah, we never touched that.
Yeah. So that one was all the reports. Now we're going to market snapshot. We already touched on it. As you can see, each company by each region, and you can change the company and year as well. Go ahead.
And this is probably going to be the one report that's actually useful.
Yep,
like super,
I agree.
Like super useful, not just mildly useful.
Also, if you guys go on the bottom, Brian, maybe we can talk more about it, but
yeah.
it also shows you like what your competitive strengths are and stuff.
Yeah, so it gives you like a brief SWOT analysis, which is pretty cool actually for what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to do. I mean, big fan of the market snapshot.
Yeah, use it to your advantage, guys.
Yep.
Company analysis, it shows you like the over years and all that, how you're performing. Really, again, but I think what we talked about, the market snapshot is a little better and more helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I never used this.
Yeah. So that was competitive intelligence report, and now it's the next is company operating reports. I didn't use this as much.
No.
Same. So I'm guessing this is the same report.
I think this was useful for maybe for your three-year plans.
Yeah,
so
we're getting there, guys. So you'll be able to see
go
that.
over those, but I wouldn't spend too much time on them.
Same with distribution report and everything, just how your company's doing. Logistic, marketing, admin. Again, I didn't even touch private label, so I can't even tell you.
Yeah. So I mean, really, if you're doing well in the simulation and you're scoring points and you have a good score, that's pretty much all you need to know.
And then, like Brian said, there's that little screen down here that shows your projections. If everything is like positive and growing, I would indicate that you're doing well.
Yeah. Maybe for like competitive, like actually like super competitive stuff, this might be helpful. But
the smaller things, if you really want to win, you might have to read these. But so this is the income one as well. Like I said, you're seeing everything you maybe did earlier in your school career, and then your balance sheet and cash flow.
Yeah.
That was the company operating reports, guys. Now we're gonna go to the 3-year strategic plan. So this vision one is pretty much you're gonna just type up what your like vision in it, like in 3 years is where your company is headed. I usually just said my company is gonna be a low cost, high volume one. I don't know what you guys did.
Yeah, well, it was kind of the same thing. We just want to be a high volume, high quality, high volume, lower margins kind of a thing, and just find like a fancy way of saying it. Essentially, that sounds like you know what you're talking about.
These ones are real easy points to do, guys. So don't like too stressed, but try like performance target. What I think I did is I did too low. So you're gonna put your one's earning per share, return, stock price, and everything, and image rating. I went way too low, and it factors in of how far you separate. So you're gonna give a projection. and your actual numbers, and that will factor in what your like points are in each section, and that's how you show how he or she will grade your overall score.
I mean, for us, it was how close it was to those numbers.
Oh, that was for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just be careful. Be careful with that. What I did was like, if you happen to know what a like a walking moving average is,
Yeah.
that's what I used to describe this, and we got about a upper 80s, lower 90s on our scores. So
Yeah, I only scored like 75 to 85,
Yeah.
so mine wasn't too high.
yeah,
Got it.
so I don't think anybody else's was.
Yeah, I didn't hold it too much because it was like 5% of your grade. I really worried about the simulation. For our class, it was like 25% of your grade. Strategic, like what would you do different? Like again, my this one, but I told them in like year 17, I had to move away because I started getting other companies that were doing the low price. So it just indicates what kind of strategy you're gonna do.
Yeah, and I mean you have multiple options there, so
Exactly.
depending on which option you choose, you're gonna have to fill out different data, and it's for
There's-
us was super tedious.
Yeah. And there was one choice that you say like my strategy is continually evolving, so that's what that's what I did. And then just overall, again, you had to fill this. This was so repetitive, just going
This is
yeah,
painful.
yeah,
Be ready to just
yeah,
hate this
Yeah.
for about an hour or two.
yeah. But it does factor into your scores, so keep that
Yeah,
in mind.
yeah.
So that was the 3-year plan. I think we had to do it twice.
Yeah,
So,
we had to do it twice.
yeah.
We had to do it on year
4 and 7?
4 and 7, yeah.
Yep. So that was that 3-year strategic plan. The last one's data export reset options. I didn't even touch
No
that.
idea.
Yeah. So that was the last. I'm just gonna go back to the homepage performance charts, and just give you guys. So that pretty much is the strat. That's BSG in the nut hole. But if you guys want more, comment below, and we'll do more videos and we can talk about our experiences. But what I'm gonna just give you the simplest like strategy wise is I went low cost and high volume, try to sell as much. I went with cheaper labor, which was I chose Latin America, and I would have closed down North America, but I couldn't figure that out. I built capacity, so some tips is definitely utilize loans, especially earlier, and focus on your credit imaging. That's important too for loans in the future, and utilize cash. Don't be scared to use your cash. And I think you should be fine. I think you should score well over 100. But one other thing is be flexible and be reactive. So whatever the other companies are doing, react to it and make sure your decisions are reflecting of what can I do better and how they're doing. And pay attention to the market snapshot about the weaknesses. That's my advice to you guys.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It
Okay.
really is. That's
Okay.
essentially, don't be stingy with your cash. Don't be stingy with your credit.
Mhm.
Just make sure that you're gonna be able that you're producing the profit. You're basically that you're profitable, so you can actually use the cash in future
Mhm.
years to pay off those loans. Pay off your loans, any loans at the end of the game, because those will come back and haunt you. We
Mhm.
actually lost a few points.
So would you suggest not doing loans toward then, or?
I would suggest you loans towards the end, but definitely pay them off before the end of the simulation altogether.
Copy that.
I will stress on what Anthony said and really do be
Mhm.
reactive towards what the market is saying. Don't just kind of do the same thing over and over and over and over and expect to win.
Yep.
You do have to be mindful of what other people are doing.
And then like when you are picking your teams, like as this was our last class, I think it was important. Like you want to work with people you will like and enjoy, but at the same time, is you also have to find people who are willing to put the work in, because that's important. It does take time, but after you start getting into a schedule and routine, it becomes very much easier.
Yeah.
So guys, just keep that. We're not saying you're gonna win. You're not most likely not gonna rank either.
We didn't.
We didn't. But my thing is like you're gonna do a decent job, and hopefully the professors do. Like whoever you get will score that based on how your performance wise. But I feel like with this and how we explained it, you'll get the better basic understanding of BSG and be able to do decent.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and ultimately, like after the first few rounds,
Mhm.
and if you're not doing too well, you start getting the gist of it.
Yep.
Once you get past that, you're pretty much solid.
What Brian said, use the first couple rounds as like not like you can see it as practice rounds, but to learn from it and like make mistakes. It's not how you start, because I think I did okay in the middle, but toward the end I had in my mode I was just trying to sustain myself, and I heard a lot of people start very well, but then it's how you really finish.
It really is, because I mean you'll see. I don't know how many rounds you will get for this simulation. We had 10.
Yep.
So things changed very differently. We actually started on the bottom. Our first year was like terrible.
Yep.
And then we increased we actually held the first place for 4 years, but then we got knocked down by somebody who had been doing poorly the entire simulation,
Yep.
and we came down on fourth overall
Yep. So
out
just
of
be
like 9 people.
so just pay attention to that, guys.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna. I know this video runs long, but I'll definitely maybe throughout my description tell what sections so you guys can find the information easier. I really made this for my friends who are about to take this class or are about to take it within a year. So this was real helpful. This information. If you got any questions, comment below. I'll make sure to try and answer them. Like this video, share it. Thank you again, Brian, for doing this video.
Thank you.
And as always, thank you guys. Subscribe to this channel, and I'll make more content. I know my videos are all over the place right now, but it's really stuff I like to make, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. I just got done with school, and this is one of the big classes. This class was very stressful for some people. But as always, subscribe, and thank you.